Hey YouTubers, welcome back to my Season 4 countdown. Today we're going to talk about some movies. So George R.R. Martin recently revealed that they are working on some Game of Thrones movies. They're seriously being considered, but not until the series is done. And everyone pretty much agrees that there's at least 7 or 8 seasons of material, so we're talking like 2019 before we're going to see one of these. The movies he talked about mostly had to do with some of the expanded material, you know, like Dunk and Egg, Blackfire Rebellion, Night King, you get the idea. You know, all those awesome stories that you wanted to see but that they just don't have time or money to do right now. Hopefully what we'll see is like a Star Wars situation, a better version of the big Star Wars expanded universe on screen. So what I'm going to do is my top 5 stories that I think would make for the best movies. So quick shout out for my countdown. If you're finding me for the first time, I'm just doing a special video countdown to the Season 4 premiere. Be sure to subscribe to get everything and leave me any suggestions on videos that you want to see me do. My next one is going to be a Q&A video tomorrow, so be sure to leave me all your questions. So here we go. Number 5, the Hedge Knight, also known as Dunk and Egg. Dunk is just short for Sir Duncan the Tall, and Egg is the nickname for the future King Aegon Targaryen V. The series takes place when Aegon was like Bran's age right now. He was Sir Duncan's squire. All of the Dunk and Egg stuff takes place about 90 years before the current events in the show. Martin has already written a lot of this. A novella in the Legends anthology was what kind of started it off. It became the first Dunk and Egg story and ended up later getting turned into a comic book at Marvel. So if you wanted to read a Game of Thrones comic book, you can actually do that right now. It's an ongoing series. There are also 2 other novellas called Sworn Sword and The Mystery Knight, and a 4th one called The She-Wolves of Winterfell is currently being planned for another anthology this year. So Martin has already spent a ton of time developing all these characters, so it would make the most sense for a movie or another spin-off TV series. Plus they can just reuse most of the costumes from the show, just because it happens so close to the current events. The Dunk and Egg stories also overlap with the Blackfire Rebellion, the Bloodraven, and the War of the Nine Penny Kings. So this material could just be the backbone for a whole new series of movies, you know, not just one. And as a side note, if you're just super bummed that Winds of Winter is taking so long to get here, just read these Dunk and Egg stories because they are awesome. Number 4, the Blackfire Rebellion. So King Aegon IV, you know, unanimously voted worst king in the history of Westeros, legitimizes all of his bastards, one of them makes a claim on the Iron Throne, and it becomes the second major civil war in the history of the kingdom. The primary characters are Daemon Blackfire, who started the rebellion, the Bloodraven, his half-brother, and King Daeron II. Interesting side note, one of the other Blackfire bastards escaped at the end of all this to the east and formed the Gold Company, one of the most famous groups of mercenaries. There were a bunch of other bastards involved in that too. The whole thing started because Aegon IV thought his son Daeron was secretly fathered by his brother, so he gave his Valyrian sword, called Blackfire, to his bastard son Daemon, legitimizing him. People kind of associated this really famous sword that had been passed down from Aegon I, the Conqueror, as a visual sign of succession. So whenever you gave this sword to someone, it was like saying you wanted them to become the next king. And civil war blew up everywhere, but remember, there were a ton of huge characters involved in all these events. Number 3, the Bloodraven, also known as Brynden Rivers, one of the other bastards of Aegon IV. There's so much story that this character is involved in. The first and second Blackfire Rebellions, he was Hand of the King for a long time, he was present during all the Dunk and Egg stories, and he was a magic user. Primarily using glamoring, which is just, you know, changing your features, like Jaqen H'ghar. He also became the last Green Seer and may or may not be part of Season 4, unconfirmed. Of all the characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, he is definitely one of the most interesting, but because his story kind of spills over into what's happening now, I don't want to include too many spoilers, but feel free to ask me more questions about him in the comments below. Number 2, the Dance of the Dragons, first major Targaryen civil war. Martin actually just published this as a novella in the Dangerous Women anthology. That's the short version. There's actually a complete history that he's writing for a new book after he's done with all the regular Song of Ice and Fire books. It's called Fire and Blood, and it's going to be the complete history of the Targaryen house. For this movie idea, my number 2 idea, I'm mostly focusing on the Dance of the Dragons event, but you get the idea. You could do a whole new TV series told exclusively from the Targaryen perspective across the entire history of Westeros. It's not that there's no ideas for other series, it's just that there's way too many good ideas. If you haven't read the short story, The Dance is just a civil war that started right after the death of the king and involves his son and his daughter from another woman, and a whole lot of dragons. The real attraction to this story is that it becomes a war fought on the backs of dragons, mostly distinguished by their color. One of the big problems of the Targaryen succession was that they engaged in the kind of sister-wiving that Jaime and Cersei have been doing. So whenever they cheated on each other, they did it with other Targaryens. So sometimes what ended up happening is you had royal bastards being born inside the line of succession, just making things super complicated. And my number one pick for a Game of Thrones movie, filling in the gaps of the current events on the show. Even though the show does an amazing job of telling the book story, it still leaves a lot of stuff out. An extra movie would be an easy way to just fill in all those gaps, like telling the full story of Jon Snow's mother, Robert's Rebellion, and other things that George R. R. Martin hasn't even paid off yet. Martin will sometimes drop minor plots like the idea of Syrio Forel being really Jaqen H'ghar, little things like that. And most of the time on the show is just dedicated to things happening in Westeros, but you have the frozen north beyond the wall and stuff happening in the east. There are 2 more books coming, and Martin has said that we will get our first look at the distant north, called the Lands of Always Winter. Guess which book that's coming in. But using a movie right after the series finishes, season 8, would be a really easy way to just mop up any loose plots that they didn't have time or money to do during the actual show. But now it's your turn though. If they do a Game of Thrones movie after the series is over, would you like to see them do something with the current characters, or do you want to see a prequel story, like with the Dunk and Egg stuff? Remember, posting that Q&A video tomorrow, so leave me all your questions in the comments below, and click here to get all the other countdown videos, and click here to learn about the first couple of episodes in Season 4 and a bunch of Winds of Winter stuff. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys tonight. High fives.